Welcome. In the previous lecture, we had covered integer, floating point, boolean, and character literals in detail. Let's continue with the rest of the topic. Let us now move to string literals. String is a sequence of characters. A string literal is value placed inside double quotation mark. For example, there is nothing between opening and closing double quotation mark. This is known as empty string. There is a single space between opening and closing double quotation mark. A is enclosed by double quotation mark. Note that it is not enclosed by single quotation. So in this case, it is a string literal and not a character literal. Java is clearly a string literal. This string contains word hello and a new line character. Note use of escape sequence. And this is a string containing double quotation mark. We had to use a backslash over here as well. Let us see an example. These are the same literals we had seen on the slide. Let us run this program. So the statement 1 printed an empty string. So there is no space over here, and because we use println statement, the cursor was moved to the next line. Now this statement is printing single space. So there is one single space and println has kept the cursor to next line. Now A is printed and the cursor was moved to the next line. Then Java was printed and then the cursor was moved to the next line because of the println statement. Then we are printing hello with new line character. So hello was printed. New line means move the cursor to next line, and as we use println statement, the cursor was moved again to the next line. And finally, we printed a double quotation mark. Last literal is null literal. Null literal is defined in Java source code file as null, all in a small case. We typically assign null literals to object reference variable. For example, string name equals to null, object obj equals to null. Note that a string and object are classes in Java. We'll see lots of examples of null in future lectures. It is one of the commonly used literals in Java. Till now we have just printed all the literals to the console using system.out.println. That was okay to understand the concept of literals, but programming is all about doing some operations on these values or taking decisions based on these values. For that, we need to store these literal values somewhere. Location where we store and refer the literal is known as variable. English definition of a variable is something that may change. So why this location is known as variable in Java? Let me explain. Now suppose you currently have 5 apples. To store this number, we'll have certain location. So suppose this is the location and we name this location as count and we store 5 over here. Then you receive 2 more apples. So now the count is 7. So we will erase 5 from here and we will write 7 over here to the same location, count. And now suppose you give 3 apples to your friend. Finally, you are left with 4 apples. So what I will do over here, I'll just cut this and then store 4. So at one point of time, this count location was holding number 5. Then later on, we use the same location to store number 7. And finally, it is storing number 4. And that is why this location is known as variable. Generally, binary representation is stored in the memory location. I have used decimal 5, 7 and 4 just to explain the concept of variable. Let us go back to the slide to see the technical definition of a variable. So a variable has a data type. The data type indicates the type of value variable can hold. For example, integer numbers, floating point numbers, string and other things. Name, the variable name must follow rules of identifier. So what is the syntax to declare a variable in Java? First, you need to provide a data type. This represents the type of data that particular memory location can hold. Then the name of the memory location, will use this name to get or change the variable value. And finally, an optional initial value. Most important point to note is that the Java programming language is statically typed, which means that the data type must first be declared before variables can be used and it cannot be changed later. We'll come back to this point when we see variable example. The data type can be either primitive type or reference type. We'll see all the primitive type in the next lecture and the reference type in later lectures. In the example below, int and char are primitive type, string is a class in Java, and char is a user-defined class. So these two are reference type in Java. Let us see an example of variable. Let us go through this statement. So we have a memory location, name is x, type is int, and we have assigned an initial value of 100. Now these two statements, we have another memory location, name is var, type is char. So on the first line we have just declared the variable, and on the second line we are assigning a value a to this memory location. So character a we are assigning over here. But for a string type, which is a reference type, the memory location stores the address pointing to a string value and not the actual string value. Let me explain. First see the left hand part. We have a memory location. It is of a string type. The name of this location is name. Instead of storing Udayan over here, it will store the address of the location where Udayan is stored. So Udayan is stored in some other location. So over here, I am going to store string Udayan. And let us suppose the address of this location is 10101000. So at this location, 10101000 will be stored. So instead of writing this memory address, we point a arrow to indicate that this address is pointing to this memory location. So this is the major difference between a primitive type and the reference type. Primitive type are storing actual value. Here int x equals to 100, so 100 is stored at this location. Char var equals to a, so a is stored at this location. But for a string, which is of reference type, because a string is a class in Java, we are storing a memory address where that actual value is stored. Two more things to note over here. First thing is, this memory location can only store values that are compatible with integer type. It may not be able to store floating point number such as 1.23 or some string Java. You cannot store these two values. Similarly, with char, you can store values that are compatible with char type. You cannot store string a, you cannot store any decimal number, floating point number. These two numbers are not possible. Second thing is, I cannot change the type of x from int to any other thing. We have defined x as int. I can never change it to float or any other type. This is not possible in Java. Let us run this program. This is the same program we had just seen. Now instead of just printing x, we can prepend some text to it. Plus is known as the concatenation operator if either of the operand is of string type. In this case, left operand is of string type. Let us run this program. Control F11, and you can see the output. The value of x space, and then the variable name was replaced with the variable value. Similarly, the value of var is a and my name is Udayan. You could ask a question, why name is not printing the address value? So x is storing 100, so the output was 100. Over here var is storing a, so output was a. But name over here is storing 1010100. Still, when we are printing it using system.out.println, Udayan is printed and not 10101000. This is not shown in the output. Hold on for some time, I will explain it when we learn object class and inheritance. For now, just remember, for a string type, you can get or set the value of a string variable using the variable name. That's it for this lecture. In the next lecture, we'll see all the primitive types available with Java. Happy coding and see you in the next lecture.